Chapter 13. A few days after her aunt's release from the hospital, Imogen found herself feeling antsy. Being the independent sort herself, she understood why her Aunt Jo was determined to do things on her own, but it was frustrating to not be allowed to help. After all, that was the only reason she was there. Just this morning, she found that crazy old woman leaning on a crutch in the goat pen, saying hello to her kids when she should have been resting. When Imogen told her to go inside, she just laughed and kept going about her business. 20 minutes later, found her aunt exhausted on the porch swing, napping, her crutch slid useless to the floor. There was nothing Imogen could do but cover her with a blanket and leave her to rest in the fresh air. Imogen didn't want to leave her too long, but had some errands to run in town, including a visit to Harper's store. But first, she had texted Laura to see if she could stop by for a tour of the barn and check in on Fortune. This time, rather than driving by and admiring it from afar, Imogen pulled into the driveway and typed the given code into the security panel. As she watched the wrought iron gates slowly open, she took a deep breath. This place was fancy. The paddocks were still a lush green despite the onset of autumn, and the contrast against the pristine white vinyl fencing was marked. Despite it being midday, she was surprised she didn't see any horses grazing or playing in the fields. She kept her car slow as she was aware the engine could be loud and didn't want to scare any of the animals. She couldn't see them, but knew they were there somewhere. It was an equestrian facility after all. She pulled into a parking area and got out of the car. No one came out to greet her, so she opted to peek into the barn on her own and see if she could find Laura. The first thing she noticed was the quiet. She expected animals to be in the aisles, grooms to be working, and trainers to be riding. Instead, she found the horses tucked into their stalls, munching on hay, and she seemed to be the only human. While she was confused, she took the opportunity to explore on her own. After all, she reasoned, Laura knew when she was coming, and the car in the parking lot was a dead giveaway that she had arrived. The barn itself was a beautiful hunter green on the outside, and it was obviously well cared for and maintained. Inside, there appeared to be 3 long aisles of stalls, with washing stalls on one side and a large tack room and viewing area on the other. Each stall had a brass nameplate noting the horse within and a full gate guard, ensuring no nosy faces could reach into the aisles begging for treats. The equestrian facility was obviously well run, if a little cold. Imogen paused in the tack room, inhaling the scent of leather. Now that gave her some great memories. For a moment, she was transported to her early teens. She felt the well-oiled leather under her seat as she rose into her 2-point and cleared the final jump. She heard the sound of the bystanders clapping as she leaned down to stroke her horse's neck in thanks. He was a horse her family had leased for a year, a great prospect who went on to compete in Wellington with another girl a few years later. He was a good boy who loved to be in the spotlight, unlike her. "There you are. Welcome to Smithfield." Laura walked into the open tack room to find Imogen sitting on a tack trunk in deep thought. She jumped up guiltily. "I'm so sorry. I didn't see anyone when I arrived, so I just had a little wander. This takes me back in time." "Well, you're back now. Let's take a walk and I'll show you around, and then I'll take you to see your friend." Laura smiled and gestured for Imogen to follow her. Despite the barn's immaculate appearance, Imogen could tell that Laura took her job seriously. Her boots were polished, but well broken in, and she glowed with pride as she gave her a short tour. "Your barn is simply breathtaking," Imogen admitted. "I feel like it should be on the cover of some magazine." Laura laughed and said, "We actually were featured in an issue of Stable Style last year. We're very proud of our facility." Imogen oohed appropriately as the trainer continued. "We are primarily hunters and jumpers, showing down in Wellington in the winter and the HITS Vermont Summer Festival and HITS Saugerties in summer." "That's impressive. I competed a little when I was younger, but never on that level. You must have a lot of wonderful horses and riders." "We do at that." She stopped outside a stall located directly in the center of the barn. "Look, Fortune, your friend stopped in to see you." Imogen turned to say hello to the big bay. Then she saw him, head low, dozing in the far corner, his back to them. He looked so sad. Laura continued. "The horses are stalled often so they don't get injured. I can't let you in to say hello, unfortunately. Bianca wouldn't like that, not to mention he can be a bit territorial and defensive when someone comes in his stall. Imogen swallowed the bile that rose in her throat at the thought of horses locked up all day, some without any sun. Pasting a small smile on her face, she replied, "Of course. I understand that he's Bianca's horse and worth a lot of money. I'll just say hello and be on my way. I know you're busy." As if she'd been reminded of something, Laura looked at her watch. "Yes, I must meet the hay delivery right now, but our head groom Jose is here if you need anything. Just don't go in the stall or open the door, okay?" "Of course. Thank you for taking the time to let me say hello." Imogen watched her leave and turned to the horse, who had shown no movement except the small flick of an ear at their conversation. "Hey, big guy. Are you taking a nap or just biding your time? No wonder you like to wander, huh?" She didn't want to defy the rules and open the stall, but she threaded her hand through the gate. He couldn't even see the horses on either side. To her, it felt more like a prison cell than a stall. She sighed heavily and watched his ears flick back toward her. He was listening. "Sometimes I feel like I'm stuck too. I'm not from around here and don't know how long I'll be staying, but that's okay because I get bored easily. I'm guessing you're bored too." She laughed as he sneezed. "At least your owner comes and rides you often. That must be fun." He pinned his ears for a moment, so quickly it may have been another flick. Imogen slid to the ground and leaned with her back against the gate. "I don't know who I am. I've had a million jobs. None of them keep my interest. I'm tired of bouncing around, but the thought of staying somewhere that I dread, waking up and going to work, doesn't appeal either. I guess I'd just like to find the one thing that makes me happy. I'm starting to wonder if it even exists." Imogen sighed and closed her eyes. She didn't know how long she remained like that, but when she heard a scuff, she opened her eyes to find a practically vibrating Bianca, arms akimbo and looking ready to spit fire out of her ears. Neither spoke, and the tension grew. Imogen wasn't one to hold her tongue, but she didn't really have a good reason why she was there, sitting outside a strange horse's stall as he chewed on her hair through the grate. That realization broke her silence, and she yanked her head away and jumped to her feet, dusting off the seat of her pants. "Well, this is awkward." Bianca just stared at her, unblinking. Imogen didn't mind comfortable silence, but when she was nervous, she tended to blab. "Hi, Bianca. It's nice to see you. I just popped by for a tour with Laura of your gorgeous barn, so I thought I'd stop by and say hello to your horse on my way out." She smiled awkwardly. "Yes, I can see that," replied Bianca coolly. She was dressed impeccably once again in tailored breeches, sun shirt, and knee-high field boots. Her blonde hair was slicked back into a low ponytail, the tail of which curled coyly over her shoulder. She looked beautiful. Imogen swallowed. She didn't mind confrontation, but she didn't like being in the wrong either. "I owe you a huge apology about the other day. I said some things that I'm ashamed of, and frankly, I didn't make the best impression. I'm sorry. I don't know you or your horse." Bianca's stance softened ever so slightly. "If there is any excuse, which there isn't, I had a concussion. I hope that we can start over." Bianca picked at the imaginary lint on her sleeve, then nodded. "I am sorry about your accident. I heard about it, and that must have been scary. Thank you for your apology." Yes, well, I must have lost track of time, so I'll leave you and your horse. I have some errands to run." Imogen gave a little wave, then began to walk away. She could almost feel Bianca's eye boring into her back. Just as she reached the open double doors, she heard the other woman call out, "Imogen, just a reminder in case you forgot. This is my home, my horse, my boyfriend. You're just passing through. When your aunt is better, you'll leave. Don't get too comfortable." She spoke nothing but the truth, and yet it still stung. She didn't like being reminded she didn't belong anywhere. Imogen nodded in reply and then walked out the door.